Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 of my Dirt Road series, and in this video we're going to go ahead and finish out the road and put in the old fence and add all the final details. The app that we're going to be using is ArtRage for Android. And if you want to follow along traditionally, I have a list of all the canvas and paint and brushes that I use in part 1. So here we're starting out with the field being done, and we're trying to add a little bit more detail to the road. So we're going to add some old ruts, like somebody has gone up it when it was muddy, and so you want to make some short, choppy, dark strokes, and you want it to follow the shape of the road, and that means that it's 1-point perspective, so you want to go ahead and keep the ruts wide towards the edge of the canvas and towards the viewer, and then you want them to get smaller and thinner as they go off towards the horizon. And again, you want to follow the shape of the road with these. And so here I've added some dark brown, and if you're following along traditionally, you can use dark umber, and just kind of smudge it out as you add the strokes in. And you want a short, choppy stroke. You don't want a straight, perfect line. You want this to look like it's dirt clumps and it's mud clumps, or it's old dried mud, or maybe it's sprinkled the night before and somebody went over the road and they've pushed up all the mud right there in the middle of it. And so just go ahead and smudge those out and make sure that they are not a solid line. Make sure that they have some streaks of light orange through them, and that's what I'm doing here, just kind of breaking it up. And I'm using the everlasting oil brush in ArtRage because it's a pretty good brush when you want to make nice thin strokes. And then I wanted to add the old fence post in here, and you can use sort of a grayish purplish color for this, or maybe a grayish blue. And you want to go ahead and follow the rules of perspective with the fence posts as well. So they'll be longer and farther apart near the edge of the canvas, near the viewer. And then as they go off towards the horizon, they're going to be smaller and they're going to be closer together. And that gives the depth and the 1-point perspective that you find in this painting, because we want to show on the road going off towards the horizon, and the fence posts need to follow these rules as well. So here I'm just kind of trying to make sure that the fence posts are sort of jagged looking and old. You don't want them to be, I don't want them in this picture to be tall and straight. Now you can have them if you want a brand new fancy fence, go ahead. I just think it adds interest to have an old fence that some of the posts might be leaning, some of them are jagged. They're not brand new fancy posts. It's kind of an old fence. And then I'm just kind of letting the bottom of the post fade away into the grass so that looks like you're in the bottom of the grass there. And then here I'm saving the painting. Always save, because usually it crashes. And in ArtRage, you lose the whole thing. They don't. It might save some of it, but sometimes you just lose the whole thing. So make sure that you save frequently in ArtRage. And so here I've added a few highlights to the fence and smudged them in. I don't want big details on this fence. I thought about adding big details, but then I decided that took away from the interest of the road. And the road is the focus of this painting. So I'm just leaving the fence post kind of indistinct and sort of smudged at the bottom, and not real detailed. And then here I'm just merging the layers down, but I like to keep the main elements on separate layers. So the grass is on a separate layer, the sky may be on a separate layer, and the road on a separate layer. Some of the detail work you can merge together. And so that's kind of the way I like to work. I don't work with a lot of layers. Some artists work with hundreds of layers, and maybe that's the best way to do it, because if you mess up, well, you don't mess up the whole painting. So, but I like to be close to traditional painting as much as possible. And so here I'm trying to smudge out the rocks a little bit more on the edges and just kind of settle them down into the grass. Just a little bit more towards the top, kind of smudge that out, because the details are going to be not as distinct. Things won't be as clear as you go towards the horizon and farther back into your painting. So we want to kind of smudge that down just to give it that depth look. And then I also wanted to add a few more clumps of grass just to further set the road down into the grass there. And also wanted to add a little bit more smudges around the bottom of the post, and just kind of smudge some of the bottom of the grass clumps out, so that it sets down more into the field and it doesn't look like you have sprigs of grass floating in the air. You want them all to kind of blend together, because this is a big field of grass here, and that's what we're trying to put across. Is you want the tall grass. This is tall grass. You can make pictures with the smaller grass if you want to also, but for this painting, that's what I wanted, a big field of grass. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit more of the sprigs in the left-hand corner, and again, you would use a lighter color so that it would show up against the dark background, but you don't want to kill all your dark background. So I'm just adding a little bit more of the details of the grass. And you can do this with your script brush if you're following along traditionally, and some very thin phthalo green paint. And make sure that it's thinned down with acrylic with water. And if you're doing oils, then it would be oil with some sort of medium linseed oil or whatever you're using. I don't like oils because they don't dry fast enough for me, but that's just a personal preference. And then here I wanted to add just the last details with some little scraggly bushes, just some little bushes right there like they're poking out of the field of grass. And so I added those at the post and along the edge of the road, and just kind of for the final touches. And then I decided to call this one good and just have it as sort of a study on how to make a dirt road. But you can add more things in here if you want to. You can add horses, or anything, a squirrel in the corner, whatever you want to add. But this is just kind of a focus on how to do the dirt road. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to see what I do next, hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.